Jake Ryder cursed under his breath as smoke poured from the cockpit. His once functional exploration craft now looked like a crumpled soda can hurled into a bonfire. He slammed his fist against the controls, which responded with a pitiful puff of smoke. "Fantastic," Jake muttered, wiping soot from his face. "Stranded in alien nowhere with a diet bar and half a bottle of water. Just my luck." He climbed out of the wreckage, squinting at the dense jungle around him. The trees were impossibly tall, their leaves shimmering in hues that defied Earth's color spectrum. The air smelled sweet and floral, though an undercurrent of something musky made his nose twitch. His self-pitying internal dialogue was cut short when he heard heavy footsteps approaching. Turning slowly, Jake froze. Emerging from the foliage was a group of towering women, each at least 3 times his height. Their skin glistened with a golden hue, muscles rippling beneath barely their outfits made of woven vines and shimmering fabric. The leader, a statuesque figure with piercing green eyes and an air of authority, stepped forward. Her voice boomed, rich and commanding. "EP*SSIES or die here!" Jake's brain screeched to a halt. He stared at her, slack-jawed, as the phrase echoed in his head. Was this some kind of elaborate alien joke? Was she being literal? His survival instincts told him not to laugh, but his internal monologue was already spiraling into chaos. He cleared his throat. "Could you maybe repeat that?" The leader frowned, her towering figure looming closer. She jabbed a finger at him, her tone firm. "Outsider! You EP*SSIES, or you cannot stay. Prophecy demands it." Jake's face went through a full spectrum of emotions: confusion, panic, a flash of inappropriate curiosity, and finally, sheer terror. His mouth worked, but no coherent words came out. A smaller, relatively smaller, woman stepped forward, holding a primitive-looking translator device. Her voice came out distorted and glitchy. "Welcome. Sacred feast, save tribe, outsider must partake." Jake latched onto the word feast, like a lifeline. "Oh, a feast. Great, yeah? Food. I love food. Big eater. Always happy to, partake." The leader, who Jake later learned was named Zyra, gave him a piercing look before nodding. "Good. You will join us. Fail and you die. Right. Join or die. Totally reasonable." Jake muttered under his breath as the women closed ranks around him. As they marched him toward the village, Jake tried to process the surreal situation. The women seemed friendly enough, if you ignored their alarming size and the occasional threatening glance. They walked with an elegant grace that made their imposing frames even more intimidating. Every now and then, one of them would glance down at him and whisper to another, their laughter like rolling thunder. Jake caught snippets of their language, which the translator occasionally mangled into phrases like "small but sturdy" and "good hands for delicate work." By the time they reached the village, Jake's nerves were frayed. He was ushered into a massive clearing, where a long table sat piled high with exotic fruits and dishes. The centerpiece was an enormous, cat-shaped fruit glowing faintly under the alien sun. Zyra gestured dramatically. "Feast begins! Outsider will eat the sacred P***size and fulfill the prophecy." Jake blinked, his panic resurfacing. "Okay, just to clarify, when you say P***size, you mean this fruit, right?" He pointed hesitantly at the glowing centerpiece. The women burst into laughter, a sound that felt more mocking than reassuring. Zyra smirked. "You will know. Begin!" Jake shuffled forward, his brain working overtime to decipher their cryptic instructions. He picked up the cat-shaped fruit, which was surprisingly heavy, and examined it. Its skin was smooth, its scent sweet but oddly sharp. Taking a deep breath, he bit into it. The taste was indescribable. Sweet, spicy, and tangy all at once, with a texture that shifted between creamy and crunchy. Jake wasn't sure if he loved it or hated it, but the women's approving nods were encouraging. He was halfway through the fruit when Zyra barked another command. "No hands! Only mouth!" Jake froze. "You've got to be kidding me." Zaira crossed her arms. Sacred rules. Eat properly, outsider. Suppressing a groan, Jake leaned forward, awkwardly biting into the fruit like a dog at a watermelon eating contest. The women cheered, their enthusiasm making him feel both ridiculous and strangely validated. As he continued the bizarre ritual, Jake couldn't help but notice Zaira watching him closely. Her gaze wasn't just evaluative, there was a hint of amusement, maybe even curiosity. For a moment, their eyes met, and Jake felt a strange mix of attraction and intimidation. By the time he finished the fruit, his face was sticky, and his dignity was in tatters. The women applauded, their laughter echoing through the clearing. Zaira stepped forward, towering over him with a sly smile. You survived first trial, outsider. But prophecy not yet fulfilled. You will stay. More feasts await. Jake groaned internally. Great. Can't wait. As the women led him to his temporary lodging, a woven hut that looked comically oversized for his frame, Jake flopped onto the makeshift bed and stared at the ceiling. Lost in alien jungle. Giant women. Weird fruit rituals. No ship. No way home. He muttered. Then, after a beat, could be worse. The next morning, Jake woke to the sound of rhythmic drumming and the scent of something cooking. Groaning, he sat up, his back aching from the oversized but surprisingly uncomfortable bed. He rubbed his eyes and stepped outside, where he was greeted by a small group of the giant women. Outsider, Zaira announced as she approached, her golden skin glowing in the early sunlight. Today, we continue your trials. Prepare yourself. Jake tried to muster some enthusiasm, but the memory of yesterday's ordeal left him wary. Trials, huh? Does this one involve more fruit? Or, any chance I can just fix my ship and get out of here? Zaira's sharp laugh echoed through the village. No escape yet. You must prove yourself worthy. The prophecy demands it. He sighed, resigning himself to his fate. Fine. What's next? The women led him to a massive communal area where a feast had been laid out. This time, the dishes were less alien, though still strange. Meats roasted on open flames, skewers of colorful vegetables glistened with juices, and a large bowl of something that looked suspiciously like pudding sat in the center. Zaira gestured to the table. You will eat with us, outsider. But this is no ordinary meal. It is a test of trust, connection, and endurance. Jake raised an eyebrow. Endurance? How hard can eating be? The smaller woman with the glitchy translator stepped forward. Her device sputtered as she explained. Sacred meal bonds hearts. Outsider must understand meaning of togetherness. That didn't clear up much, but Jake decided to play along. He sat at the table, feeling the weight of their eyes on him as he reached for a piece of roasted meat. The moment he took a bite, the room erupted in cheers. The women joined in, each taking pieces of food and encouraging Jake to try everything. It was oddly communal, though the way they insisted on feeding him directly was both hilarious and awkward. At one point, a particularly bold woman leaned down and placed a slice of fruit directly in his mouth, her grin mischievous. Jake chuckled nervously. Thanks, but I can handle this myself. Zaira's voice cut through the laughter. No. You accept our care, our nourishment. It is part of the ritual. He sighed but obliged, letting them feed him bite after bite of various dishes. The flavors were overwhelming, each one a wild blend of sweet, savory, and spicy. As the meal continued, Jake began to notice something strange. The women weren't just feeding him, they were subtly testing him. One woman handed him a drink that fizzed and smoked, clearly waiting to see if he would hesitate. Another offered a skewer of meat with a sly look, whispering something Jake didn't understand but assumed was a joke at his expense. Jake decided to lean into the humor. Let me guess, this drink is gonna make me grow 3 heads, right? The women burst into laughter, and Zaira smirked. No. But it may make your stomach regret everything. With a theatrical grimace, Jake downed the drink in one gulp. It burned like fire going down, and he coughed violently, tears streaming down his face. The women roared with laughter, pounding the table in approval. Outsider is brave, one of them declared, her voice filled with admiration. Yeah, brave or stupid, Jake muttered, his throat still burning. As the meal wound down, Zaira leaned forward, her expression serious. You do well, outsider. But the next part is most important. You must share yourself fully with us. Jake blinked, caught off guard by her phrasing. Share myself how, exactly? The translator sputtered again. Show truth. Vulnerability. Remove mask. Jake's eyes darted around the table, unsure what they expected. Right. Well, here goes nothing. He took a deep breath and began to talk. He told them about Earth, his failed mission, and the crash that had left him stranded. He cracked jokes about his luck and shared embarrassing stories from his life, hoping humor would bridge the gap between them. To his surprise, the women listened intently, their expressions softening as he spoke. They laughed at his jokes, gasped at his tales of danger, and nodded sympathetically when he described his struggles. When he finished, Zaira reached out and placed a massive hand on his shoulder. You are strong, outsider. Stronger than you know. We see your heart. Jake swallowed hard, feeling an unexpected lump in his throat. For all their bizarre rituals and cryptic language, these women had a way of making him feel seen in a way he hadn't expected. Thanks, he said, his voice softer than usual. That means a lot. Zaira smiled, her usual sternness giving way to warmth. The prophecy speaks of an outsider who will bring change, not through strength alone, but through understanding. You are proving yourself worthy. Jake chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. Worthy of what, exactly? More weird drinks and cryptic messages? The women laughed again, and Zaira's grin widened. You will see, outsider. In time you will see. As the group dispersed, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he was beginning to understand these women, and himself, a little better. Still, he couldn't help but wonder what the next trial would bring. Knowing his luck, it would probably involve more awkward rituals and questionable food. Jake was beginning to think he'd signed up for the weirdest cultural exchange program in the galaxy. By midday, Zaira approached him with an air of authority that made him brace for whatever madness was next. Outsider, she began, her voice echoing. You have eaten with us. Now you will embrace our ways of bonding. Bonding? Jake repeated, his tone wary. This doesn't involve more mystery drinks, does it? Zaira smirked, the faintest hint of amusement in her otherwise stoic demeanor. No drinks. Something far more personal. The tribe led him to a secluded area, lush with vibrant foliage. A small group of women gathered, their expressions a mix of curiosity and excitement. Jake's unease grew as he noticed their expectant gazes. What's the deal? He asked, glancing at Zaira. She gestured to a low platform covered in intricate carvings. You will participate in the dance of union. It is how we share our spirits, our essence. Right, Jake said, running a hand through his hair. And by dance you mean? One of the younger women stepped forward, her smile mischievous. You move. We move. We feel each other. Her translator glitched mid-sentence, leaving Jake to fill in the blanks. Fantastic, he muttered under his breath. As the drumming started, Jake realized he had no idea what he was supposed to do. The women began moving gracefully, their steps deliberate yet fluid, their bodies swaying in time with the rhythm. It was mesmerizing, but also intimidating. When Zaira nudged him, Jake hesitated. Full disclosure, I'm more of a two left feet kind of guy. The women laughed, their voices ringing like bells. Zaira's expression softened. Do not think. Just move. Feel the rhythm. Jake sighed and stepped onto the platform. He tried to mimic their movements, but his awkward attempts only earned more laughter. One particularly daring woman danced closer, her towering frame making him feel like a clumsy child. Loosen up, outsider, she teased, her smile dazzling. Jake groaned. Easy for you to say. You're not the one looking like an idiot in front of a giant audience. Confidence is key, Zaira interjected, her voice firm but encouraging. Determined not to embarrass himself further, Jake focused on the beat, letting his body move instinctively. To his surprise, the laughter shifted from amusement to approval. The women began to mimic his moves, turning his awkwardness into a shared joke. "That's right," he said, grinning. "Follow the outsider's lead." The energy shifted as the women joined in, their laughter mingling with the music. Jake found himself relaxing, the initial tension giving way to genuine enjoyment. As the dance reached its climax, Zaira stepped forward, her movements precise and commanding. She locked eyes with Jake, her expression unreadable. Now, the final step. Before he could ask what that meant, Zaira reached out and pulled him into the dance. Her strength was both exhilarating and terrifying as she guided him through a series of intricate steps. Jake stumbled at first but quickly caught on, their movements synchronizing in an unexpected harmony. The other women watched with rapt attention, their smiles hinting at something Jake couldn't quite place. When the dance ended, the silence was almost deafening. "Well," Jake said, catching his breath, "that wasn't so bad. I might even call it fun." Zaira's serious expression returned. "You did well, outsider. But this was not merely for enjoyment. It was a test of connection." Jake frowned. "Connection? You mean like teamwork?" "Among other things," Zaira replied cryptically. The translator woman stepped forward, her device sputtering as she explained. "Dance shows truth of spirit. You fit. Different, but not alien." Jake wasn't sure whether to take that as a compliment or a backhanded remark. "Thanks, I guess?" Zaira nodded. "You have shown adaptability, humor, and courage. The tribe sees you as one of us now." "That's great," Jake said, his tone light. "Does that mean I can finally fix my ship and get out of here?" The women exchanged glances, their smiles fading slightly. Zaira's voice softened. "The prophecy is not yet fulfilled, outsider. One final trial remains." Jake groaned. "Of course there is. Why wouldn't there be?" As the women dispersed, Jake couldn't help but feel a strange sense of belonging. Despite the absurdity of it all, he realized he was starting to care about these people, or giants, rather. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that the final trial would be the weirdest one yet. Knowing his luck, it would probably involve another round of cryptic instructions and cultural misunderstandings. But at least, for the first time since crash landing, he wasn't facing it alone. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the jungle in hues of amber and violet, Jake sat cross-legged in the center of the tribal circle. The air was thick with anticipation, a palpable tension that made him sweat more than the oppressive humidity ever could. Zaira stood before him, her towering figure framed by the flickering light of the fire. Her expression was solemn, her voice steady. "Outsider, you have danced, feasted, and proven your spirit. But the prophecy demands a final act. One that binds you to our people forever." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Forever? You mean metaphorically, right?" The tribe remained silent, their faces unreadable. Jake's stomach churned. "I'll take that as a no." Zaira knelt before him, her piercing gaze locking onto his. "This act is not one of flesh, but of heart. You must choose. Stay and become one with us, or leave and return to your world." "Wait a second," Jake said, holding up a hand. "You're giving me the option to just walk away?" Zaira's lips curled into a faint smile. "If you can." That sounded ominous. Jake glanced around, searching for any signs of a catch. The women stared back at him, their expressions a mix of hope and sadness. It hit him then, this wasn't just about a prophecy. These people genuinely wanted him to stay. "I mean," he began awkwardly, "I like you guys. Really, I do. But I have a life back home. A job. Well, had a job. Point is, I can't just drop everything and move in." Zaira tilted her head. "What awaits you there that is greater than what you have found here?" Jake hesitated. He thought about his cramped apartment, the long hours at a job he didn't care about, the endless monotony of Earth life. Compared to that, this jungle paradise, with its strange customs and vibrant people, seemed almost appealing. Almost. Freedom, he said finally. The ability to make my own choices. Isn't that what your whole prophecy thing is about? Letting people decide their own fate? Zaira studied him for a long moment before nodding. Perhaps you understand more than I thought. Before Jake could breathe a sigh of relief, she added. But understanding alone is not enough. You must still prove your worthiness. Of course I do, Jake muttered under his breath. Zaira rose to her full height and extended a hand. Follow me. The tribe parted as she led him to a secluded clearing. In the center stood a massive stone tablet, its surface covered in intricate carvings. Zaira placed a hand on it, her expression reverent. This is the Heartstone, she explained. It holds the spirit of our people. To complete the prophecy, you must leave a piece of yourself here. Jake blinked. You want me to, what, carve my name into it? Zaira shook her head. Not your name. Your essence. Your truth. Right, Jake said slowly. And how exactly do I do that? Zaira gestured to the stone. Speak your truth. Let the Heartstone decide if you are worthy. Jake stared at her, waiting for the punchline. When none came, he sighed and stepped forward. He placed a hand on the cool surface of the stone, feeling an odd vibration beneath his palm. Okay, he said, his voice echoing in the stillness. Here goes nothing. He took a deep breath and began. I'm Jake. Just a guy who got really lost. I don't know if I'm the savior you're looking for, but I do know one thing. Life's too short to let fear hold you back. So, if staying here means embracing something new, something bigger than myself, maybe that's not such a bad thing. As he spoke, the carvings on the stone began to glow, their light pulsating in time with his words. The air around him seemed to hum with energy, the ground trembling beneath his feet. When he finished, the light faded, leaving the clearing in silence. Jake turned to Zaira, his heart pounding. Did it work? Zaira smiled, a rare warmth in her eyes. You have done well, outsider. The Heartstone accepts you. The tribe erupted into cheers, their joy infectious. Jake found himself grinning despite the lingering uncertainty in his chest. So, what happens now? He asked. Zaira placed a hand on his shoulder. Now you are free to choose. Stay with us, or return to your world. Jake hesitated, his mind racing. He thought about the life he'd left behind, the monotony and loneliness of it all. Then he looked at Zaira, at the tribe, at the vibrant jungle that had somehow begun to feel like home. Maybe, he thought, this wasn't such a bad place to get lost after all. With a deep breath, Jake made his decision.